Surprised, not surprised?
Well, not surprised at all, because ahead of the meeting over the weekend, so we did get a sense that if Helen Zille were to be elected, so Mashaba would go. I mean, he had even written very extensively to say he can't work with the right-wing cabal, basically referring to the IRR, Institute of Race Relations. I remember when Helen Zille decided to contest this position, Desiree, she did not resign from IRR. So she basically suspended her participation. And given the view that Herman Mashaba and Mmusi Maimane had taken of the IRR, so it was clear that so should she win, so Mashaba would not be able to work with that one. So, I mean, he blended them right-wing elements.
Natasha Piri, who has ably covered this story, just spoke to a representative of the African National Congress, Dodo Morero, who was saying that the Democratic Alliance is not able to manage the internal contradictions. That's rich coming from the ANC, isn't it?
Well, obviously the ANC is happy with what is happening because they see themselves as possible beneficiaries. In fact, they've been saying Mayor Mashaba should go, so they've never liked him from day one. Never mind that he appears to have endeared himself to the ordinary populace of Johannesburg, perhaps because of things that he was doing or he was saying. So for the ANC, it's really understandable. And I'm sure wherever they are now, they are trying to angle, and there's a lot of horse trading that is being undertaken. But here is my my take and my view and my suspicion is that given that we are only about, give or take, 18 months into the local government elections, so I don't see the EFF agree to work with the ANC. So there is a possibility here of a provincial administration taking over. I see a stalemate because it would be very difficult to agree on any candidate. So I see a stalemate, and then the provincial government is likely to take over. But of course, it's still early days, Desiree, so we will see as days progress. In fact, we are still waiting for the statements from the headquarters of these political parties.
As they say, a day in politics.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this could be Joburg, but this is the engine of South Africa's economy. So everyone is interested in knowing what is happening here. I mean, we've been trying to get hold of the EFF, and I suppose they are busy crafting a statement. And of course, the ANC will do the same. So I suspect that the provincial administration will take over in this case because this stalemate would be very difficult to break. All
right, we're a bit ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to Herman Mashaba's announcement. Yeah. Break it down for us.
Well, he says, if I have to choose between my party and my people, I choose my people. I mean, he says in his statement, I've been working with people who wanted me to focus on cutting grass in the upper urban areas,
the suburbs,
and forget about the service delivery. So you can see that there were issues already deep. In fact, this one made it easier for him. I mean, if he is able to come out now...
He says the collapse of the coalition was a foregone conclusion.
He says it was a foregone conclusion because already he is telling you that ideologically they are not agreeing. And then given that now Helen Zille is taking over, someone he sees as someone who shares the same sentiment with those he's not been agreeing with. So he felt, well, instead of being pushed out, let me just go.
How did you read his disposition as he was making his announcement?
He looked very angry. His demeanor told the entire story. But more interestingly, I think, Desiree, was the presence of Mmusi Maimane. Remember, when he read his statement, he paid tribute to Mmusi Maimane to say, I joined this party because I believed in Mmusi Maimane's vision of taking this party forward. Now that is being interfered with, so I can no longer be part of this. So that does tell you, in fact, we may be talking about Herman Mashaba here, but there's a bigger story here. In fact, the fact that after that press conference, Mmusi Maimane spoke, but they wouldn't take questions.
I wondered.
tells a bigger story. Because they knew what kind of...
This was Herman Mashaba's presser.
Yes, yes. And then here's the leader coming. I mean, someone is resigning from your party, from his job, and then you are there. So what does it say? Yesterday, you were with someone else who is the cause of this one resigning. So spare a thought for Maimane. He has to navigate all of this. So, and Maimane,
wow,
well, he's a politician now, but he may not be, he's not in the game for long. So he now will have to summon all his tactics and strategies to navigate this.
How will Mmusi Maimane come out of all of this? I mean, he comes on and he says the agreements for the coalition in Johannesburg, they stand and they continue in the face of a democratic alliance that says our brand has been muddied.
Well, as you have said, it's a coalition government, so it doesn't depend on one individual. It doesn't matter what you say. You can say you wish, but it also depends on what I say. So it will depend on other partners. So how do they view this? How do they feel about this? So I think that's the reason why, even if you heard yesterday, because they knew that this was coming. There's an early Congress coming, because this is a very difficult time for Mmusi Maimane. I mean, we may be talking about Herman Mashaba, but this is talking to the future of Mmusi Maimane. So will the early Congress resolve to have him as the leader continue? So if he continues, so will he be able to work with people who have actually indicated that they may not necessarily be happy with the kind of vision he's pushing? Remember, he is known to have supported Athol Trollip. So it means his vision was along Athol Trollip. And his FEDCO, the Federal Council, which would be the equivalent of NEC, rejected that.
Yeah.
So these are the people you're working with. We know that in the provinces, he's got quite loyal support. But in the core, do you have that support?
It's tempting when you're talking about the story to only focus on the influence of the economic freedom fighters. But what is the sentiment in the background in terms of the smaller parties who also have to throw in their hat to determine the direction of this process?
Well, that's right. The smaller parties, in this instance, their role is very limited. Given that the actual kingmaker in this instance is the EFF. Because, I mean, ANC, by the way, people may have forgotten, ANC is the largest party in that municipality.
Absolutely.
But it's just that largeness is not large enough.
It was not able to achieve a majority.
A majority.
Yeah.
So, and then that makes DA and EFF the real ones.
The natural coalition.
So the small ones would only, because it doesn't matter what they say, if EFF pulls out, there's nothing that the DA can do, because they would not be able to reach any majority.
Let me bring in another unrelated matter.
Sure.
And you stated at the beginning of the conversation that you have been trying to get hold of the EFF.
Yes.
They are concerned with another bigger issue right now, the leadership contest within their own party.
Yeah.
How do they deal, how do they straddle this treacherous road of saying, we looking at the bigger picture, but there's also this little matter on the side?
Well, I think what preoccupies them now, currently, is the leadership, or is the conference that is coming up
in December.
In exactly 2 months? In exactly 2 months. Actually, less than 2 months.
Yeah, it's a bit less than 2 months.
Yes. Yeah. So that is very important for them. Remember, they have to choose the new leadership. We already know that some of the senior leaders...
do we know or do we hear?
Well, okay, we hear, because, I mean, I would say we know if they confirm.
Yeah.
But obviously, from various sources, we have an idea of what is happening. So I think that's what they're concerned about, and then they want that to run smoothly. They want to manage that as much as they possibly can. But I mean, in politics, you can't then be one-dimensional. You also have to deal with other issues that come up everywhere.
You're operating in an environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is why, I mean, I don't think Mmusi Maimane a year ago ever thought he would be in this kind of situation, but just came one election everything changed. So that's why they are also, the EFF is really trying to manage this. And remember, week in and week out, there are allegations in the newspapers. They have to manage all of those things. They have to manage the perception. They have to manage what they do. And particularly, they touch on the leader and the deputy president of the party. So they're very concerned about that. So that's why, I mean, even if you look at this process, it's very well managed, rather well controlled.
Yeah.
So you don't get to know a lot more what's happening. So once that is over, I'm sure then they'll be able to then pronounce their new direction. What is it that they want to do and with who? So at the moment, these are the issues really that are really irritating to them, I guess.
Herman Mashaba says, as I've said, the collapse of the coalition was a foregone conclusion. You almost get the sense that there's a foregone conclusion that it's the end of Mmusi Maimane's political career, but that might not necessarily be the case, is it, Mzwai? Because sometimes they say you win the battle, but you haven't lost the war. This is the situation.
I think, in my view, if Congress of the DA were to be held tomorrow, Mmusi Maimane would win. You know why I'm saying this? Because if you look at the provincial structures, he's managed to put people who are by and large loyal to him. I can tell you this. At the weekend when the FEDCO was about to sit, you had Adol Trollip and Helen Zille campaigning. So, oh, by the way, before the Congress, before the meeting started, so they were allowed to campaign openly. So you could see around Adol Trollip, who was there, most of the provincial leaders so tended to coalesce around him. So then that gave you an idea that provincially, so
where
he
are
has
the factions?
Support. But there's this other issue, perhaps that is not often talked about around the DA politics. We've not been focusing on it because it's not been the governing party. But there's this issue. You know, there's also a structure called FedEx. There's FEDCO. FEDCO would be what you know, NEC. And then there's FedEx. FedEx would be what you know as
the NWC.
NWC.
Yep.
So FedEx is basically the one responsible for running the day-to-day functions of the
background, as Helen
DA.
Zille calls it.
So who constitute that FedEx? It's by and large those provincial people, those people we would say are loyal to Mmusi Maimane. So it means they can be able to then channel the direction of how they want things to happen.
KZN has already made their feeling known.
Yeah. Absolutely. But beyond that, there is a bigger DA. There's a bigger DA. So that's where the real battle is. I mean, the Congress that is coming up, my view is that if Mmusi Maimane stands, he is likely to win it. But here's the question. Would he have won the war or the battle? Because you can see there are people who have decided that they need to take the DA back to what they knew it to be. So it's going to be very interesting going forward.
So now Helen Zille says she's going to play a background role. We all know that is not possible. Helen Zille is not a background person.
Well, if she wanted to play a background role, or to use her favorite line, to stay in her lane.
Yeah.
So the question is very simple. So why did you come back? Because you've been the leader of this party. You've been the mayor of Cape Town. You've been the premier. So you've basically have had it all. Even the ascension of Mmusi Maimane to top office was basically engineered by Helen Zille. She was the candidate, I remember in 2015, I think she was unopposed going to that Congress, I think in PE. She was unopposed. But just a few weeks before that, we heard that she had pulled out and then she was supporting Mmusi Maimane. So, which told you that she laid the ground, a very fertile ground for Mmusi Maimane to take over. But as they say, sometimes if you feel you have put someone in a position, there's always a tendency of wanting to control, and they say it, to rule from the grave.
Yeah.
But remember, once I taste the power and I feel it, I want to flex it. So yes, you did help me, but I also have my own characteristics. I have my own way of doing things that you may not like. So I think this is what happened in this situation. So she prepared someone to take over the party, and along the way, she realized that, no, man, this person is not going the way I thought she would. That is why she decides to then come back.
So the loss at the polls, you agree with the sentiment that that's just an excuse?
Well,
it gave them,
basically,
it armored them.
Because remember, Mzwandile Mbeje, everyone basically felt that the DA had reached the ceiling in terms of its traditional support base. So it needed to grow new markets. So someone like Mzwandile Mbeje, who appeals beyond the traditional support base, needed to do things differently. But in the process of doing things differently, you risk alienating your core base.
Yeah.
And I think it's the core base that is complaining to say, we don't know this DA.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why things had to happen.
So let me ask you, Mzwai, is the resignation of Herman Mashaba a big story?
It's a huge story. It's a huge story. I was saying earlier, Herman Mashaba is the mayor of Johannesburg. But Johannesburg is the city that runs this country. If you look at Gauteng in its totality.
But politically, is it significant?
It's very significant. It's very significant. Remember, politics and economics go together.
Yeah.
They go together. So if a big city is having a stalemate or difficulty, it will impact on what's happening nationally. I think in his own words, Mayor Mashaba was saying, if Joburg doesn't work, the country can't work. And I think I tend to agree with that, because Joburg, as the hub, as the economic hub of this country, must work for the entire country to be able to work.
It's a developing story, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Mzwandile Mbeje is the acting political editor here at the SABC. You're watching The Agenda. Let's take a break.